Hey guys, KCTCG here, this time with Sebs and Austin.
What's up, guys?
How's it going?
So today we're going to be talking about net decking. So first and foremost, Austin, why don't you start us off? What is net decking?
So, net decking is a type of concept in which players are looking for a better deck build for a certain nation or clan that they're looking to play. So, this net decking is looking for decks that have recently been topping in order for them to get more into the competitive side of the game.
And this of course works with any game, not just Vanguard, correct?
Correct. So, any game, any TCG, or even online uh, first person shooters like that, any type of thing like that can come off net decking because anything that can be considered competitive will have players constantly posting up their builds, their custom builds and everything that they can share with other people,
Yeah.
um, and so on and so forth.
So a thing about net decking though is the pitfall is you always hear a lot of players saying that hey, how come I'm building this guy's build card per card, but or piece by piece, but I always seem to be losing. Why is that? And people need to understand that sometimes they just need to understand why cards are run and what cards do. Like I know Sebs here has a few decks that are really good, but people just don't understand what the hell they do, so they just end up failing with it.
Yeah, it's one of those things like if you're going to net deck, you really need to sit and think about what basically like not who you're net decking from. Obviously there's a lot of different players for a lot of different games, but know what the deck does. If you don't have a comfortable idea of what you're doing with the deck, you're gonna fall flat on your face. And you're gonna sit there and wonder, oh well, why did so and so go, 15-0 and I went like 5 or 0-5 at my fucking locals. Like I did nothing.
Yeah,
It's like
like
yeah.
people, a biggest thing is that a lot of players, especially when they're newcomers, will blindly listen to whoever posts the loudest that my build is the best. And these players that blindly follow, now I have no problem with this once again, but at the same time, it hurts me every single time I see someone saying I'm quitting this game because this deck sucks. Like
Yeah, we've heard that one too many times.
I'd rather keep players honestly rather than lose players, but a lot of players they they just build the deck thinking that oh who this build is supposed to be the best, so I'm gonna play it. I have no idea what's gonna happen or what this deck does, but I'm just gonna play and roll with it, and then 5 rounds later when they're O and X, well fuck, why am I losing?
Yeah, yeah, and again too, it's like when we do net deck. I mean, if the meta is ahead in like for example for Yu-Gi-Oh for Card 5 Vanguard, I'm sure it's different for Magic, but we see the JP side.
Yeah.
If we can see Japan side first, we can get a better understanding of who's building what, who's trying to innovate what, and
And
who's ultimately.
that kind of actually leads to the other topic of just meta checking. Like people net deck with no idea what the meta is on the at the time that they net deck, the concept of the deck.
Yep. Because
Like
if you net deck, like if you think that that person that you're net decking from, if they're having every similar matchup to you, like that could not be the scenario. Some
yeah,
players that might run cards that are, let's say, like for Yu-Gi-Oh example, right? Like we'll just say like hand traps. Oh, but my current meta, if I'm net decking, their current meta is different from my current meta. So
yeah,
it's like you're just not going in with anything that you need to do that's going to help you if you net deck.
yeah, and like I know Austin here has played a lot of rogue decks as well as net deck. Not net decking like main meta, but he has played rogue decks that answer the meta. Now, what do you think about when people post up their rogue deck and have people start net decking these rogue decks? Like, do you think this is a bigger pitfall than people just net decking what's meta?
Yeah, so road decks are kind of funny in particular for Vanguard or even Yu-Gi-Oh, where a person would top once with a deck that's kind of out of the ordinary, so they feel confident in that this deck can kind of surpass these other meta decks because they've done it once or maybe even twice. Um, but it all comes down to the people's playstyle as well and favoritism. So, like in Japan and here, we see a lot of people playing the same sort of decks, and that's what we see for tournament results. And because a lot of people don't want to play these other quote unquote rogue decks, so that's part of the reason we don't see a lot of those decks kind of coming out on people topping with them or a lot of people net decking. But it is interesting and kind of funny to see those pop up once in a while because it gives people different ideas and different concepts on how they can build that deck, or even people wanting to play that deck more, and you start seeing that more on the competitive side.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's actually really good, and like that concept of rogue decks can also just be that people are taking what's meta and just twisting it a little bit with their own tech, and it'll be classified as the rogue because it's not the main build anymore.
yeah,
And
to add on to like Austin's point real quick, I do feel like the rogue decks too, when people have this like, kind of homebrew of a rogue deck, they're not sitting there net decking, or you know what? Maybe they are net decking. They're looking at it to see, hey, this deck, only goes so far up to a certain point. Let me see if I can revolve and build my whole deck around just getting way past that.
correct.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing too. Like when people net deck, they start doing their own little pieces, their own little tech choices. That's what it's called, and it starts throwing, I want to say, chaos into the mix when someone puts up a good deck and people say, "Oh, I don't like this card because they don't understand it, or they don't it doesn't meld with their playstyle." They start using tech cards, and some people need to understand that tech can either be good, useless, or what I call cute because it's only good for like one scenario.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of Vanguard too. It's like especially right now, like for D series. I mean, a lot of our stuff can be teched in. I mean, same thing like with Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, their basic three of deck structure.
Hmm.
Um, the techs that you put in, sometimes yes, they can be good. Other times, again, depending on who you're net decking from and why you see that one of that. Oh, like maybe they just couldn't figure out. There's a lot of players that in deck profiles when they're net decking, people just look at it and when they listen to the interview, hey, why did you write? Why did you run this one of? Oh, well, I just needed one space, and this is a card that I like. So, like, okay, sure, it's a pretty waifu card, and it has a skill. Let's go with that.
And
Yeah.
that's honestly one of the things too. Like sometimes the tech cards are literally there for space. Like the card does minimal effort, minimal value, and it's still being you put in the deck just because they want to. But
Yep.
sometimes people just need to understand. Like for example, let's say Vanguard, for instance, right? Um, let's say one of the most popular decks that have raised in the years, which is Magnolia for D series.
Oh yeah.
This deck is just full of, just tech in general. Like everything is, oh, when I do something, when I attack, and it just it allows players to just say, hey, what if I threw this in? What if I threw this in? Like most recently, at least not I want to say most recently, but the most recent deck build that's been out is Magnolia with NPix and Inlet Pulse. However,
Right.
people do not understand besides the fact that, oh, they're just big attackers. Now, if we actually break it down though, like I would consider these tech cards. Now, would they be good, cute, or useless? Now it depends on your point of view. Because some people think, oh, it's a good tech because it melds with the deck. Like in the pulse goes in is activated when he's seen four more attacks a turn of, and MPix works well when you don't have a full board.
Right.
Now, when you actually ask players why these cards exist in the deck, I can guarantee you 99% of them do not know the answer at all. They just literally play the deck because they're blind and are following whoever said what's the good card.
Yeah, that happens a lot, especially with these, like for Magnolia, if we're taking that for example, like people see, hey, uh Empix and the other, what's the other cards again?
Inlet pulse.
Inlet Pulse, right. So Empix and Inlet, these are the cards that they're assuming win them the game, right?
Hmm.
And then it's like, oh, I didn't see any of these cards, so I guess my deck is bad. Like, no. Like that's not, and that goes back to your point, like, why are you playing this card? Well, I think it does good. I see the other list at top with it, they do well. It's like, yeah,
Exactly.
but if you don't know when to play the card, when to use the card, how to use the card, if it's good, if you discard it for whatever reason, like if you don't know like those little nuances that your deck needs to work around, and again, you're just losing. You're fighting an uphill battle because you don't know what the deck does.
So
Uh,
like stuff like that, where it kind of it plays into the concept of net decking as well, where these players are net decking these topping decks that, for example, in Magnolia, that include Inlet Pulse and
Apex.
Impix, to the point where they're not really fully understanding the deck. They understand the concept of how it can win, and that it's a meta deck. But if they lose with it, they can't fully understand the concept of why they lost just because they're playing it because it's a meta deck. And which falls into the line of net decking is that they're just picking these decks because they're winning.
Yeah.
And it's funny too because people need to understand that uh in the previous series we were talking about just player skill, we were talking about meta, what's not meta, and also our first episode people preparing for tournament. You need to understand that as an average Joe when you're picking up a net deck, well, guess what? The people that are preparing hardcore for tournaments, the people that will be topping, you can already assume that these players have played against this deck, especially these specific builds because they are made public. So when people like these, tryhards will play the game and they see that you net deck the deck fully, well, guess what? They know exactly how to play against you, and you're already fighting a losing battle because there is no more element of I don't know what you're playing, I don't know what text you're running. But if you just say that, oh, I'm running so and so's build, oh, easy, I know how to beat them.
Yep.
Like that's the big thing. Like people need to understand that net decking, while it is good, honestly, I would say use it as a baseline. Like, don't use it as your final build.
Yep. And especially like net decking should always be, at least in mine and in Austin, and I know you I'm sure you think about it this way, Ken. Net decking should be a template. Once you have your template, this is like you're starting, this is your base. This is what you're gonna build your deck on. Now when you stop and you read your cards, you understand what works in sync with what, you can get a lot of test playing in, and you see how the deck runs. Now at that point, if you want to go ahead and change ratios or change one or two cards, that's on you. And once you start making those techs, if you feel those techs are comfortable and they add to your play style and you feel that you flow well with them, even if it is a one or a two of, those one or two ofs can make you feel more confident in the deck, which will in turn get you better results because of your mindset.
And that's another thing. Like, results that you get from playing this deck with your text, I want to say, like, the biggest thing is when you finally have your build, regardless whether or not you net decked, you used it as a base template plus your own text, whatever you do, right?
Mm.
Like at the end of the day, after you have your 50 cards or 60 cards, whatever card game you're playing, test play it. Give it 10 games. Like you can rotate people every 10 games, rotate people every game, I don't care. But in a 10 game spree, see how often your tech uh, comes up where it's good. If it's good, if it's consistent and it's always coming up when you need it, I think it's a good card. But if it's only coming up like once or twice every 10 games, or even like one, I want to say 1 through 4, honestly, 1 through 4 games, it's a cute card. It's not gonna be there for you every single time. Like if you really want to run it, then sure, catch that person off guard. And if it only comes up for like once or zero every 10 games, trash it. It's completely useless. Don't even run it.
Yeah, because again, too, a lot of these games that we do play, I mean, Vanguard, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, anything, we all know that consistency is still going to be the best thing to win. If your deck can consistently do what it needs to do and you get the dub, then you take it. And if you start messing with it too much, yeah, it does take away from consistency. It'll, you know, it'll lower the ceiling of your deck. I mean, even though some players might think, oh, but this card should raise the ceiling. Yeah, it kind of does, but again, it takes away from your consistency. So are you looking for, you know, a 45-degree road, or are you looking for like an 85-degree road to go up, you know?
Hmm.
Like at this point you're making it harder on yourself for the idea of, oh, but this is cool. I like this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, right? Like, if you want to be one of those players that, if someone walks up to you, like, with their honest opinion, telling you, hey, I don't think you should run this card, and all you do is try to defend this one card saying, oh, but what if, but what if? Well, what if only came up 1 in 10 games? I'm sorry, but a X and 1 record versus a uh, O and X record, or 1 and X record, that says it all. Like, I'd rather lose one game because I didn't run a tech card that only works 1 in 10 games versus, being a more consistent player and winning 9 out of my 10 games or even 10 of my 10 games.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that.
Like, I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening to this and you're one of those players that likes to defend your deck because, it comes up one every like 5 times, one every 10 times. I'm sorry, like, take that stick out of your ass and actually, like, and
Or
actually
that
listen.
that or I feel like an easier way for someone to swallow this pill, just be open to criticism. Because if you think that, yeah, like your local hero deck that has the three one ofs that won you that one game that one time,
Hmm.
or the big tourney, when everybody showed up, like, cool. But again, too, can you do it again? Like, and can you do it the next week and the next week and the next week? Like, if
Right?
you're not, and I mean, what are you like? Are you really trying to be competitive? Are you having fun? And again, too, like, it's nothing against players that want to have fun. I mean, we enjoy playing this game as much as anybody else or any of these games. But if you're going just to try and make, like how you said, quote, Ken, that quote unquote cute play, like, that's not gonna happen every game. That's not what's gonna win you the game. If you get it off, cool. If not, then it feels bad, man. They come in with the Johns of, oh, but if I had this one card, oh, and if I had this extra damage, oh, and if I had, whatever,
Oh
I would have won.
God.
Yeah,
We
and
hear
it's like,
these so often. It doesn't
yeah,
matter. We
that's
literally
why
just
it's like,
laugh.
dude, come on, man. Like, yeah, if your deck was also more consistent, you wouldn't have had this issue. You would have probably beat me, probably.
Nah, nah. Honestly, that's where their consistency is. They want to run more of their tech card.
Yeah, I'm playing I'm playing Highlander. What's up? We're going
Like,
in.
like honestly though, right? Like a big thing right now, and I'm just gonna use Vanguard as an example. The
Mhm.
most recent thing that has caught me off guard was the uh, special heals that have come out recently. And
Right, right.
realistically speaking, yes, I understand. Oh, but what if I run into this deck that triggers the heal condition? Well, I'm sorry, but out of, I want to say, the 15, 20 decks that we have now in the format, I think that's all we have,
Mm.
20?
Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like in the 20 decks of the format, I want to say that these heals only answer half the decks each. Like, no, sorry, not even half the deck. Half the decks in format combined.
Right, right. With
Cause
the effects you're saying.
yeah, because these cards, for one, they're different effects. So
Yeah.
you have to decide which one you want to use, first
Yep.
and foremost. And then secondly, because of their detriment of being a 10k versus a 15k shield, they don't offer much in terms of vanilla when when they're put into the scenario of what if this card's in your hand but you're not playing the deck that this card answers. Well, this card is literally just a 10k shield that doesn't do anything for you,
Yeah.
and
And
that
now
5k missing is so good sometimes.
it is, yeah. That's why it's like anything that really answers those. Again, it's good when the scenario comes up. If the
Correct.
scenario doesn't come up, feels bad, man. You just sit there with a 10k shield that, oh fuck, it looks nice. I got it at speed.
I don't know,
It looks
dude.
good.
I don't know. Some of those arts are kind of wonky.
I mean, there's like one or two that I like a lot, but
Yeah,
again,
but you
I don't
I'm
know if
looking
I
at
can.
I'm looking at Dragon Empire, and it's kind of yikes, my guy.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're playing it specifically because you prefer the art or whatever, I mean, hey, more power to you. If you can adapt around it, then even better.
Yes.
But if you're not going to adapt around it because this one looks cool, like, all right, like, yeah, tell me that when you're short 5k shield, like,
Uh,
when that last attack and your 5k shield short.
And here's another thing too. Like we've said this term a lot, and I'm hoping people understand what this means. But Austin, let me ask you something, right? Because you're the newest voice on the show right now.
Okay.
So when someone says adapt to your deck, adapt to the gameplay, adapt to the game state, what does that mean to you?
So for me, when adapting to the current meta and everything, that not only is the concept of understanding your deck and how they can play towards or against these other decks, but understanding that sometimes that deck won't always be able to fight against these other decks. So you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt here and there on, okay, am I gonna stop playing this deck for a little while because it's not like meta right now or can't compete, or am I just gonna play this just because I like it and I feel like I can play competitive, but I'm actually just playing for fun. So those type of things are things you gotta kind of take into consideration when you are trying to adapt to the current meta and competitive play.
So that's the thing. Like people like when you net deck, one, understand why you're playing the deck. Two, understand that when the person posted it, were they posting it for post the newest set or pre the newest set? Because that does change some decks and their matchups. And you also have to understand the meta that they're posting it in. Because, for example, in let's say Yu-Gi-Oh, right? In Yu-Gi-Oh, it's easy to net deck a Japanese deck into TCG because usually it's the same type of format. However, because of the different ban lists that Yu-Gi-Oh and Yu-Gi-Oh OCG and TCG get, it is not 100% plausible to fully net deck something because their ban lists are different. The same
Yep.
can be said for Vanguard. In Vanguard, our uh, the OCG is, I want to say, 3 months, 4 months ahead of us,
Yeah.
and the TCG, of course, we're behind. So the OCG has the foresight, so to speak. They are our seers. They play decks that we only dream of in the future. However, you also have to understand that in Japan, their meta is very defensive. It's very slow. So certain decks, like what was their ban list? Bastion and Magnolia. Uh,
Bastion, Magnolia, and the Crow for V. Yeah.
yeah. So they, because they're playing such a slower format, they're not aggressive. They're not, unga bunga aggro. These decks are able to punish defensive players because the slower the game goes, the more time these decks get to ramp up. And when they're at their maximum speed or their maximum power, the deck just will win. There's no stopping it.
Yeah.
And people tried copying the Japanese decks, bringing it here, and then when they lose, they say, "Why am I losing?" Like a big reason is welcome to the US of A, where our decks go at Mach 10 the moment we start stand up the Vanguard.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's
We
one
don't
of the.
wait.
Yeah, that's one thing that a lot of people will for sure see. I mean, in a lot of competitive games, whether it's like card games or Smash or I'm sure even other video
FPSs and
games like
whatnot.
yeah FPSs and whatnot, any of that, that we have different play styles. So the person that goes to your locals probably does not play like the kid in locals who won in JP. Like I'm sure he plays way different. Have a whole different mindset, whole different idea of
Hmm.
how to play, what to play, when to play. So it's all those factors will just add into it. So net decking is again a good thing as a template. It's a good thing as a base. When you think that that's your answer to the meta, and you think that that's your answer to all of your problems, and you're gonna win with it, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. It sounds like you're falling behind at that point. You're just messing up. Something's wrong.
And that's another thing too, right? Like people need to understand that when they're playing against their average Joe, oh, they'll just automatically assume, oh, that is my meta. But when they play into a regional or even just go to a different tournament, people are like, hey, how come I'm getting bodied here because I'm playing this deck that has been answering my locals, but when I stepped out of my regionals or locals and entered regionals, I just got bodied. What? Why? What happened? And
Yep.
someone's gonna look at you going, yeah, because welcome to the rest of the world where there other card players exist.
Yeah.
Other regionals have been topping, other players have been just playing to win, and these, you know, Johns that sit there saying, hey, um, how come, or they don't want to acknowledge their own loss, I guess. How
Yeah.
come that in my locals I'm losing or I'm winning, and then go outside something happens? Yeah, because there's other players that aren't you. Like, open your eyes. Like,
Yep.
most recently, I think I've played against someone that didn't know that there were other players outside, and he was very cocky that, oh hey, I can beat so and so deck just by doing this. Well, you lost, and guess what?
Yeah.
You did it. You lost in a very humiliating manner that you don't want to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and something like that can be put into anything too. Because I recently just fought someone who I ended up beating in the game, but he didn't know it was best of one. And that's when he turned around and said, "Oh, if it was best of two, I would have played totally different. I wouldn't have just thrown that game." I'm like, if it was best of two, you still should have tried winning that game. But I don't know, for stuff like that, when people get cocky and like they try to make those excuses for it, especially for someone that's kind of running a deck that they net decked and think is the best, like, oh, it would have won if I did this, or it would have
Yeah.
won if I actually played like this way instead.
Yeah. It's weird thing. Like, and again, too, if you're going into the mindset of I'm gonna play competitively to win, I think we've said this on the other podcast before. It's like go in with the mindset to win, not like in Austin's case where he played against this person and they said, "Oh, well, I threw that game," and it's like, then what are you doing here competitively? Like, if you don't want to compete and you're gonna throw a game to quote unquote like see what this person is doing or see how they play, like that's you're gonna lose a game. Like, why would I want to take the one L to get information? Like, no, I'm good. I'd rather win.
oh, that's another thing too, where like sometimes like and we're kind of segueing away from our topic today, but it's just the fun topic to talk on right now. It's just players that said, "Oh, I threw the game because of this." Are you saying that because you don't want to admit that you're bad or you're worse than me? Are you saying that because you don't want to be embarrassed or ashamed? Like, come on, man, you can admit it. Like,
Yeah,
people are here
just,
to help.
yeah, just take the L, dude. Take the L. You learn. There you go. You're good.
Like, but like, going back on the topic, right? Like,
Yeah.
so when people net deck, or even better actually, they are the progenitor of said deck and they
Uh,
lose. Like, sometimes that brings on a change in said net deck. Or let's say for um let's say for the other example, they're always winning. Like, you get this backing of either it's a good deck or a bad deck. Like, so and so keeps winning, so and so keeps losing. Like, you get so much more data that you can figure out. Oh, this deck is actually good all around. This deck is only good in some scenarios. Can I change it to be all around? And
yeah.
players need to understand that. Like, let's take this base deck and then we throw in tech cards. Does it work? Oh, it keeps working? Okay, let me test it out 10 games everywhere else. And if it keeps working, cool. This is a good all around deck.
Yep.
And when I bring it to outside my comfort zone and it keeps winning, cool. But if it starts losing, dang. Do I change it? Do I need to adapt with what's happening outside, or is it just this rogue scenario that I keep losing to? And if you do, understand why. Like, people need to understand that when you're playing a deck that's net decked, please just when you're playing to remind yourself, this is a deck that I copied from someone. I may or may not know everything about it. Like I may not understand every single concept. If you don't want to be, once again, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but you're not the best at every card game. Just realize that hey, it's someone else's deck. They built it for a reason, so you should probably understand that reason.
Yeah.
And since you're not that person, you can't just automatically pick a deck up and say, "Oh, I'm a genius."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of, I would assume like maybe the hardest one to do it for is maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially when it's like, oh, well, this person, was able to get this and that. And again, we know that luck is a factor in all of our games, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're only given what you draw. So if you draw bad, again, your net deck will just be a part of your drawing bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assume that the person that you net deck from has gone through this scenario, and whether they win or lose, they know what they're doing with it. If I get a bad hand from a list that I net decked, I could sit there and be like, wow, this deck is completely terrible. Like, damn, this deck sucks. Because my hand is terrible. Like, nah, dude, like, somebody net decked this, they understood, okay, hey, my hand is bad. I can probably still play through this and get the win. But someone who doesn't have that idea, and especially from somebody who didn't build it, will sit there and be like, nah, well, this deck sucks. This fucking sucks. This is lame. I don't want to play this anymore. And then keep losing because they go back to, oh, but this deck is fun. This deck is comfortable, and I don't draw bad with this deck.
And that's the thing too, right? Like, not even just if we net deck. Sometimes we'll just see that deck that someone's playing, and they want to copy said deck. So it could have been a net deck. It could have been a homebrew. But when people, let's say they want to copy said deck, and then they ask the person playing the deck, hey, how come you're playing this? How come you're playing this? Why not this? Why not this? Right? If you understand that if you were asking someone their idea of why said deck is being played, and you're seeking out this attention, right? You're not being told that you should do this. You're not being told anything. You yourself, you're asking. If
Yeah.
someone is asking and you're asking 20, like you're trying to ask 20 questions, don't keep fighting what they're saying. So if they answer you the first time, right? And you want to ask like 20 more follow-up questions, and maybe one of them is trying to fight the argument of your idea is better. Well, put it this way, right? Like why are you in this position to ask someone if your deck is good? If
Right.
you yourself are playing a deck that is the same as someone else and that other person's doing well, would that inherently not make their build better than yours? If they're doing well, you're not. So you're asking, but if you want to fight it, I think that's counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's being counterintuitive to the learning process. If you're gonna learn, you need to listen. If you're gonna ask questions as like a newer competitive player, hey, why do you run this card? Hey, why do you run this card? Oh, what scenario does this card come up for? Like,
Yeah, these are
take the
good
time
questions.
to yeah, they're good questions that people should ask because if the better player doesn't mind explaining to you to be like, hey, dude, like this is why I play this. This is why we play this. This comes up in this scenario. This comes up in that scenario. You get a better idea. But if you're sitting there again, like how you said, Ken, if they're fighting it, be like, oh, but I don't play that. Well, I don't play that card either. It's like, well, maybe you should. Maybe this
Yeah.
is why you're losing. Like,
And I actually, funny enough, right? Like this reminded me of a scenario that I went through. Someone was very recently asking me for my deck list, because once again my deck got an update. So,
right.
because of that update, I had to change my deck concept overall. And someone was literally looking at my deck going, "Why are you running this card? It's trash." And I'm just sitting there going, "Dang." And I just beat everyone else here. Hmm. What's your record? X2? Nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna dignify
Yeah.
what you said with an answer. I'm just gonna look at the scores and be like, I think I'm a better deck builder, I think.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the
That'll.
thing too. Like know when you're B. Like don't try to like make someone doubt their own deck because you're losing.
exactly. Or the but I like how I said earlier. Oh, but I don't play those cards. Oh, but I don't play those cards and I win. Okay, well, maybe the players who you beat are maybe not as good as I am, or maybe not as good as the players that I play against.
Yeah,
It's
like
the same with like
we can
even
say it could have been dumb luck, right?
that
But
too. Yeah,
if it's consistent back to back, I don't think they're bad.
yeah, yeah. If your record speaks for you, then everything else doesn't. Not that it doesn't matter, but it's gonna be an underlying factor.
I mean, I'm gonna say the majority, like the majority rule. Like I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure Austin has won many games through luck. He's probably
Oh yeah.
smiling right now because we're telling the truth. But at the same time, like we can't hold that to a grain of salt because
Hey, literally, we were just test playing right now, and Austin hits a 6 damage over trigger, and he looks at me, and I'm like, God damn it, dude! Like, I'm fighting such an uphill battle at this point. Just stop hitting triggers, please. Like,
It's a curse to be blessed with the plot armor,
yeah,
anime plot
but
armor.
people the people that are salty, right, when they lose to you because of this plot armor,
AKA
uh
me.
the truly salty one will just say, I would have beat you if you weren't that lucky. And sometimes that is true. Like maybe I want to say 10% of your luck games are like, yeah, if you didn't, you lost. But at the same time, there's the underlying factor that people don't understand. If he got there and like understanding the odds, and the odds were saying that, hey, if this happens, you actually win the game,
Yeah,
then it's not truly fully luck. It's
yeah,
also part calculated. And
yeah,
part of it is now, yes, of course, the over trigger is a guarantee 1 in 16 in a deck out of 50 cards. But regardless of that factor, understanding that that possibility is there is also part of understanding a build, because if he was able to get to that point in the game where this happens, is his deck actually, bad or good, or is he just super lucky? Because there's decks and players that can win without it. They absolutely need it to win,
yeah.
or their deck is consistently hitting these miracle triggers. And
Right.
all of this needs to be accounted for when you net
Yeah.
deck or when you build a deck.
And not to like to add on to that point too, right? Like while like a little bit off topic, but like while in our game, me being the player that I am, I can sit there and say, okay, you know what? Austin, he was searching his deck, was adding multiple cards. He was able to drive check and hit triggers or, add other cards to his hand, right? He was drawing consistently. And I haven't seen this one card. So to me, as a more experienced player, I should sit there and be like, damn, Austin probably will hit this one card that I haven't seen yet. But a bad player, again, somebody who does not take the time to reflect, will just sit there and think, oh, he got so lucky. Oh my God, he got so lucky because he hit it. Like, nah, like I can sit there and stop after the game and be like, you know what? I could have seen that coming. Like, that's my fault.
And that's the thing too, right? Like some players are just gonna blindly just keep saying, "Oh yeah, no, this isn't how it's supposed to end, or this is how it's supposed to go." Then tell me, how was it supposed to go?
Exactly.
How in your fantasy land was this supposed to end? Like from the build to the player to the gameplay to the play style to even just understanding percentages, like how is this supposed to go? Are all my cards that I purposely put in the deck gonna sink to the bottom so I only draw useless? Like what?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing, right? Like, so some people think that, because then very recently I had this conversation with someone, and they were saying like, oh, for example, let's take Vanguard, right? So Vanguard is a game where you have 16 triggers that can change the flow of the game. Because if your opponent hits them back to back, or in Austin's case, they just magically sit on top when he's about to take 6 damage. When this happens, players get salty, they get mad, and they just blame that luck factor. But
Mm.
what people don't understand is when they net deck, they're not using their own um, capabilities to build a deck. They're not putting themselves in the deck so that when they're winning or they're losing with that deck, it's because someone else put in the effort for you. So theoretically, if you are a good player and we are doing what we said, where we use the net deck as uh, a a base, a template, we are actually just using someone's idea for just, hey, where's my structure? Where's the skeleton of the deck? And then
Yeah.
you yourself put time and effort into building the deck. You're putting your own skill into the deck at this point. And this we will be explaining a little more on this topic next week. I do believe it is a good time to introduce player skill to this. But when a player is good, or good enough at least, right? And they're building a deck. You can tell that the player puts time and effort into the deck. Like this is what we used to deal with the older formats. But with the
Yeah.
newer formats where player just doesn't do any of this, they don't do their homework, they don't do their research, and they just build the deck, right? I want to say like 90% chance that a player will just get bodied. And they'll keep getting bodied until A, they learn what to do, what not to do, and what they're doing wrong. Or B, they just sell the deck and just move on.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, I want to say, and this is a phrase that a lot of people say, they net deck the helmet deck.
Mm.
And yeah, that knowing like
I mean, hey, and I don't mind, putting the strap on and just going with the helmet and just going straight to town. But I do know that a lot of these helmet decks, I mean, you can go unga bunga all day, but shit, like if you're not hitting, like in Vanguard's case, if you're not hitting those extra triggers or you're not drawing into all your pieces, we're still gonna constantly hear the excuse of, "Oh my God, I net decked this deck that won, 20-0, and I didn't win any single game." It's like, yeah, is that the deck's fault or is that the player's fault? Like maybe your skill isn't up to par with the deck that you're playing.
exactly. And
Yeah.
the other thing is too, right? Like, and I'm pretty sure Austin has to deal with this before. When people go through this, they're just gonna be ignorant. They'll blame another factor and then move on.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
But
for stuff like that, like especially for the decks that I use, I like the concept of relying on that luck, but the luck is only there because the decks I use are decks that thin and toolbox.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Royals, Golds, Orphis, those are decks that toolbox and search for specific cards to kind of thin out your deck in order to get that quote unquote luck.
Yeah.
And I don't know. For me, that's something that I really enjoy is that luck factor. But
And
it's
part
something
of
that
this
you kind
is
of make.
because you built the deck also
Right.
to
Right.
do this kind of gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
not like you just strapped it on and go in. You
Right.
actually had to construct ground up, and then put in the
Mhm.
right cards, and then play it through.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
So
mean it's consistent playtesting and trying to fully understand how the deck is going to work and how the deck is going to work for you. And that's a big thing on net decking as well. Is like, how can this deck work for your playstyle?
Yeah.
And that's a
correct.
lot. That's a concept a lot of people just can't grasp. They think, "Oh, this deck is good, I win," and then they don't win. It's like, why are people playing this? It's so bad.
Yeah.
But it's because they don't understand the concept of the deck and the concept of their own playstyle.
Yeah, and some players unfortunately will never be able to grasp this idea until the end of their career, maybe even longer than that, right? Like they just
Right.
said, you know what, card games are not for me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. Like if you want to quit the game, then quit the game. But if you're always looking back, saying, "Damn, why does he keep winning with that deck, but I keep losing?" And maybe it is that I shouldn't play this game. Maybe it is because this game sucks. Is it though? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it not just you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I get like those people like like I guess back to our older episodes, right? It's the mentality. It's the oh like this deck sucks, therefore I suck, therefore I'm bad at card games. Like nah, dude, like If you stopped,
Dude, that is
under
the worst fucking
that's why.
I think that's it, in math I think it's called a truth.
That's why, like, you try and tell people, like, dude, like, that's not the case. And again, if you have a defeatist mentality where you're, oh, but I net decked this deck. Oh, and this deck won this regional, like, or this big, event. Like, yeah. But if you're not there yet, don't be so hard on yourself. It takes time. It takes
Yeah.
time to understand. It takes time to learn. It doesn't take any time to net deck and complain about no wins. That doesn't take any time at all.
No, it doesn't. And another thing is, right, like some people, whilst it does take time, right, to develop these innate skills to be good at a card game, sometimes some people are just born with the innate ability of being good at the game. Like they
Yeah.
pick it up, they look at it, they read it. Oh my God, I know what to do. And unfortunately, some players are not blessed with this. Some players take months, weeks, days to learn. Like, yes, I said that backwards, but
Yeah.
but realistically speaking, right? Like some players are born with, like Austin said, that plot armor, that ability to just be like, oh, I'm naturally good. And some players had to go through a struggle of, all right, I've play tested every deck, I've played against everybody that I've met. This is what my good deck is,
Yeah.
and like there may not be a difference between those two players that one took the time and effort to learn and the other person that was just born to be a good player. Like it happens. But both
Yeah.
players, I can guarantee you, did not just copy pasted the build. They took a build online, they deconstructed it to a bare bone, rebuilt it back up to fit their needs. And from there they became officially good at the game. No
Yeah.
one literally copies a deck online just to win.
Right.
Like
That
it does happen. Like if those that are listening, it happens.
tier
But
zero formats are a thing, but so
I mean, yeah.
hopefully we don't have those anymore for
But
certain
like there's
stuff.
players that will try to fight this argument, right? That's saying, "Oh, well, I don't put effort and I'm normally bad at the game, but when I play this deck, it just wins." Yeah, when you strap on a helmet, you don't get hit, you don't get hurt as much. But, things
Yeah.
happen. There could just be that one person that, unfortunately lost that would have beat you had they not lost to,
Yeah.
the previous round. And like sometimes we'll never be able to see that happen because it'll never happen. I'll never need to fight this person, right? But
Right.
in that chance that you do, in the off chance that this will happen, well, guess what? Buckle up because you're in for a ride. You're gonna get smacked left and right, and if you end up saying, "Oh, this deck sucks because of that," well, damn. What happened to your previous accolade?
Exactly. Yeah. Your previous argument was this deck wins, therefore I win. Now I lost, therefore this deck sucks. Oh, well,
What can you do?
what can you do exactly? Yeah. Well, you can do one thing, which is stop and learn and figure out why. And net decking will help you, but it won't guarantee you success.
And that's the biggest thing to take away from this today, right? Like when you net deck, understand that you're taking someone else's mentality and trying to apply it to yourself. You're trying to understand that person. But if you're playing someone's deck and you have zero idea of what said deck does, right? Then guess what? You're gonna lose because net decking is honestly the same thing as you walking up to said person, asking them, "Hey, can I borrow your deck?"
Yeah.
And then you're playing with it and you're losing.
Yep.
Like it's not like you're borrowing their deck. It's not like you're borrowing someone's deck and they're coaching you around above your shoulder.
Yeah.
Like that's not gonna happen.
Exactly.
Like if you are blessed to get this kind of teaching, I guess, because it will happen, right? Like let's say you borrow your friend's deck, you're essentially net decking your friend's deck, and
Yeah.
you're getting coached by him. Well, guess what? You're getting a speed pass to try to learn and level up and be good at this. But if you don't have this ability and you need to learn from ground up, guess what? You're gonna lose. and you should probably, do what we said, deconstruct the deck and build it back up.
Yeah.
So it does seem like this will be the end of our video for today. However, stay tuned for next week where we do talk about a player's skill and just a throwback to, I believe, our first episode. We'll also be talking about luck as well. That's gonna be a fun episode.
That'll be fun. That'll be good. Too many stories involving luck.
I mean, yeah, but there's also times where we can just counter luck. But
Exactly.
more of that will be talked about next week. And also, guys, thank you for listening. Those that are enjoying this, please give us a like and a follow. Those that want to hear different topics as well, because to you it does seem interesting, and just let us know in the comments below. Uh, Once again, KCTCG, this is Ken, Austin, and Sebs.
There, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.